Genesis chapter 2, verse 1 through 3. God rested from his creative activity on the seventh day. This is not the rest that follows weariness, but the rest of satisfaction and completion of a job well done. Although God did not command man to keep the Sabbath at this time, he taught the principle of 1 day of rest in 7. Verse 4 through 6. The name Lord God, Jehovah Yahweh Elohim, appears for the first time in verse 4, but only after the creation of man. Genesis 1:27. As Elohim, God is the creator. As Jehovah, he is in covenant relation with man. Failing to see this, some Bible critics have concluded that these different names for God can only be explained by a change in authorship. This is the history refers to the beginnings described in chapter 1. Verse 5, which reads, "Before any plant of the field was in the earth, and before any herb of the field had grown," describes conditions on the earth in chapter 1, verse 10, when the dry land appeared, but before vegetation appeared. The earth was watered by a mist rather than by rain. Verse 7, a fuller account of the creation of man is now given. God formed his body from the dust of the ground, but only the impartation of the breath of God made him a living being. Adam, which means red or ground, was named after the red earth from which he was made. Verse 8 through 14. The garden that God planted in Eden was toward the east of Palestine, the point of reference for Bible directions. It was located in the region of Mesopotamia near Hiddekel, Tigris, and Euphrates rivers. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil provided a test of man's obedience. The only reason it was wrong to eat of the fruit was because God had said so. In different forms, that fruit is still with us today. Verse 15 through 23. The penalty for violating the commandment was death, verse 17, instant spiritual death and progressive physical death. In the process of naming the animals and birds, Adam would have noticed that there were males and females. Each one had a mate that was similar to itself, yet different. This prepared Adam for a helper who would be comparable to himself. His bride was formed from one of his ribs, taken from his side as he slept. So from Christ's side, his bride was secured as he shed his life's blood in untold agony. Woman was taken not from Adam's head to dominate him, nor from his feet to be trodden down, but from under his arm to be protected, and from near his heart to be loved. God gave headship to man before sin entered. Paul argues this fact from the order of creation. Man was created first, and the purpose of creation, woman was made for the man. 1 Corinthians 11, 8 and 9. Also, although it was Eve who sinned first, it is by Adam, the head, that sin is said to have entered the world. He had the position of head and was thus responsible. Verse 24. With the words of verse 24, God instituted monogamous marriage. Like all divine institutions, it was established for man's good and cannot be violated with impunity. The marriage bond illustrates the relationship that exists between Christ and the church. Ephesians 5, 22-32. Verse 25. Although Adam and Eve lived in the Garden of Eden without any clothes, they were not ashamed.